My name is Dorothy, and at 62, I've become intimately familiar with the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. Since my husband Frank passed away 18 months ago, sleep has become as elusive as the life I used to know. Most nights, I find myself wandering through our house, checking locks, adjusting curtains, or simply sitting by the kitchen window with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the world sleep while I remain awake. It was during one of these sleepless vigils, at exactly 4 in the morning on a Tuesday in October, that I witnessed something that would change everything I thought I knew about my daughter Linda. Linda is 38, my only child, and since Frank's death, she has become what everyone calls my caretaker. She moved back into my house, the house Frank and I bought 42 years ago, ostensibly to help me through my grief and to make sure I wasn't alone during this difficult transition. At least that's what she told everyone at church, at the grocery store, at the bank. Poor Dorothy, I would overhear people saying. Thank goodness Linda is there to take care of her. Take care of me. The phrase had begun to grate against something deep in my chest, something that felt like the person I used to be before grief made me smaller, quieter, more willing to let others make decisions for me. But that Tuesday morning, sitting in my usual spot by the kitchen window, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Linda was in the backyard, near the old oak tree where Frank used to read his morning paper. She was wearing dark clothes and holding a small gardening shovel, the kind we used for planting bulbs. But she wasn't planting anything. She was digging. Even in the darkness, lit only by the motion sensor light that had clicked on when she stepped outside, I could see that she was working quickly, nervously. Her movements were sharp and urgent, not like someone doing casual garden work. She would dig for a moment, then pause and look around, as if checking to make sure no one was watching. But I was watching. After several minutes, Linda reached into a canvas bag she'd brought with her and pulled out something. From my position at the window, I couldn't make out exactly what it was, but it appeared to be small objects, multiple items that she placed carefully into the hole she'd dug. She covered them quickly with dirt, patted the earth down with her hands, and scattered some fallen leaves over the spot. Then she gathered her tools and bag and hurried back toward the house. I sat frozen at the kitchen table, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What had I just witnessed? What could Linda possibly be burying in our backyard at 4 in the morning? The reasonable part of my mind tried to provide innocent explanations. Maybe she'd found some old bulbs and was planting them for spring. Maybe she'd buried something sentimental of Frank's as a sort of memorial. Maybe she was surprising me with some kind of garden project. But the growing knot in my stomach told a different story. The secrecy, the darkness, the nervous way she'd kept checking to make sure she wasn't being observed, none of that suggested innocent gardening. I heard the back door close softly, heard Linda's footsteps on the stairs leading to her old bedroom. I waited listening until I was sure she was settled for the night. Then I sat in that kitchen chair for another hour, staring out at the oak tree, trying to decide what to do. By 5:30, as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky, I had made my decision. I was going to dig up whatever Linda had buried. I waited until I heard the shower running upstairs. Linda's morning routine was as predictable as clockwork. Then I slipped outside with my own gardening tools. The motion sensor light clicked on again, making me feel exposed and guilty, even though I was investigating something happening in my own backyard. The spot where Linda had been digging was easy to find. The earth was still soft, and the scattered leaves she'd used to camouflage her work hadn't been quite enough to hide the disturbed soil. I knelt down beside the oak tree, the same tree where Frank and I had carved our initials 30 years ago, and began to dig. The hole wasn't deep, maybe 8 inches, but Linda had definitely buried something. My small gardening trowel hit something solid after just a few minutes of digging, something wrapped in what felt like plastic. With trembling hands, I pulled the package from the earth. It was a plastic grocery bag, the kind we kept under the kitchen sink for collecting food scraps, but this bag wasn't filled with scraps. It was heavy, substantial, filled with objects that clinked together when I moved it. I carried the bag back to the house, my heart racing with a mixture of curiosity and dread. In the kitchen, under the bright overhead lights, I opened the plastic bag and spread its contents on my kitchen table, and that's when I screamed. The bag contained my mother's jewelry, all of it. The sapphire earrings that had been her mother's, the pearl necklace Frank had given me for our 25th anniversary, the diamond brooch that had been in my family for 3 generations. Every piece of valuable jewelry I owned, jewelry that I kept in a locked box in my bedroom closet, was spread across my kitchen table, covered in dirt from my own backyard. But that wasn't all. Mixed in with the jewelry were documents, important documents, the deed to our house, stock certificates that Frank had left me, insurance papers, bank statements. Legal documents that proved my ownership of assets I didn't even know Linda knew about. My hands shook as I examined each item, trying to understand what I was looking at. Why would Linda bury my jewelry? Why would she have these documents? And most importantly, how had she gotten into my locked jewelry box and my private filing cabinet? The answer came to me with the cold clarity of someone who had been willfully blind finally choosing to see. Linda hadn't moved back home to take care of me. She had moved back home to take care of my assets. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time, staring at my possessions I hadn't even realized were missing, and trying to piece together what had been happening in my own house for the past 18 months. Since Frank's death, Linda had gradually taken over more and more of my daily affairs. She had convinced me to let her handle my banking, saying it would be one less thing for me to worry about while I was grieving. She had taken over bill paying, grocery shopping, even sorting my mail. She had keys to everything, access to everything, control over everything, and I had been grateful. I had been so lost in my grief, so overwhelmed by the practical details of living alone after 40 years of marriage, that I had welcomed her help. I had seen her involvement as love, as devotion, as the natural response of a caring daughter to her mother's needs. But looking at my buried treasures, I began to see it differently. I began to see a systematic pattern of control, of gradual takeover, of preparation for something I hadn't even considered. The shower had stopped running upstairs. Linda would be down for breakfast soon, ready to start another day of taking care of me. I quickly gathered all the jewelry and documents, stuffed them back into the plastic bag, and hid the bag in the pantry behind the flour canister. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with my morning coffee and waited. "Good morning, Mom," Linda said as she came downstairs, already dressed for work in her business suit. She worked as a real estate agent, which suddenly took on new significance as I thought about the property documents she'd been burying. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep any better last night?" The question felt loaded now, like she was checking to see if I'd been awake, if I'd seen anything I shouldn't have seen. "About the same," I said carefully. "You know how it is." "I know. Have you thought any more about what Dr. Martinez suggested, about the sleep medication?" Dr. Martinez, another recent addition to my life, another person Linda had insisted I needed to see. A doctor who had suggested that my insomnia might be a sign of depression, anxiety, or even early cognitive decline. A doctor who had recommended medication that might help me sleep more soundly, so I wouldn't be awake at 4 in the morning watching out my kitchen window. "I'm still thinking about it," I said. Linda poured herself coffee and sat down across from me, her expression concerned in the way I'd grown accustomed to over the past months. "Mom, I'm worried about you. You look tired, stressed. Maybe it's time to think about making some changes." "What kind of changes?" "Well, this house is so big for just you, and with your sleeping problems, your anxiety about being alone. Maybe it would be better if you were somewhere with more support, more structure." Somewhere with more support, more structure. The language was familiar, gentle, reasonable, but after what I discovered in my backyard, it sounded different. It sounded like a script. "I'm not ready to move, Linda. I know it's scary to think about, but there are some really nice places now, Mom, not like the old nursing homes. Beautiful communities where you'd have your own apartment, but also have help when you need it. Beautiful communities. Like the brochures I'd noticed Linda had left around the house recently, brochures for senior living facilities that looked expensive and elegant and very, very far from the life I'd built with Frank." "Linda," I said carefully, "have you been in my jewelry box recently?" The question caught her off guard. I saw something flicker across her face, surprise, guilt, calculation, before she settled on confusion. "Your jewelry box." "No, why would I be in your jewelry box? I was looking for my mother's sapphire earrings yesterday, and I couldn't find them." "Oh," Linda's voice was casual, but her hands tightened around her coffee mug. "Maybe you moved them somewhere else. You know how forgetful you've been lately." Forgetful, another word that had crept into conversations about me, another suggestion that my mind wasn't quite what it used to be. "Maybe," I said. "I'll keep looking. You know, Mom, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're losing things, you're not sleeping, you're anxious all the time. These are signs that maybe you need more help than I can give you while I'm working." "What if I don't want more help?" "Sometimes we don't want what we need. Sometimes people who love us have to make difficult decisions. People who love us have to make difficult decisions." The phrase hung in the air between us like a threat disguised as affection. After Linda left for work, I retrieved the plastic bag from the pantry and spread its contents across my kitchen table again. This time I examined everything more carefully, looking for clues about what Linda had been planning. The documents were particularly revealing. Mixed in with papers I recognized were others I'd never seen before: applications for power of attorney, forms for asset transfer. Even a draft will that left everything to Linda, with provisions for selling the house and liquidating all assets. A will I had never written or signed. I sat staring at that forged will for a long time, understanding finally what I had been watching from my kitchen window. Linda hadn't been burying treasure. She had been burying evidence. Evidence of a systematic plan to take control of my life, my assets, my decisions. Evidence that she had been preparing to have me declared incompetent or moved to a facility where I couldn't interfere with her management of what used to be my affairs. Evidence that she had underestimated her mother. What Linda didn't know, what she had never bothered to ask about or investigate, was that her father hadn't been the only one with business sense in our marriage. While Frank ran his accounting firm, I had been quietly building my own portfolio of investments and properties. Small real estate deals at first, then larger ones, rental properties in other states that generated steady income. Stock investments that had grown substantially over the years. Frank had known about these investments, had even helped me research some of them, but we had kept them separate from our joint accounts, partly for tax reasons, and partly because I had enjoyed having something that was entirely mine. When Frank died, I hadn't mentioned these assets to Linda because I hadn't seen any reason to. They were mine to manage, mine to leave to her when the time came. But the time was coming faster than I had planned, and not in the way I had expected. I spent that afternoon making phone calls. First to my lawyer, James Hendricks, who had handled Frank's estate and had been urging me to update my own will. Then to my accountant, who managed my separate investment accounts. Then to my bank, where I discovered that Linda had indeed been using her power of attorney to access accounts she wasn't supposed to have access to. By the time Linda came home from work, I had a clear picture of what had been happening and a plan for what needed to happen next. "How was your day, Mom?" Linda asked as she hung up her coat. "Very productive. I made some phone calls, took care of some business." "Oh, what kind of business?" "Well, I called James Hendricks about updating my will. And I spoke with the bank about some irregularities in my accounts." Linda went very still. "Irregularities?" "Yes, it seems someone has been accessing accounts they shouldn't have been accessing. Using power of attorney documents that were meant for specific, limited purposes." "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you? Linda, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Have you been taking money from my accounts? I've been helping you manage your finances, you asked me to. I asked you to help me pay bills and balance my checkbook. I didn't ask you to transfer money to your own accounts." Linda's face flushed red. "Mom, you're confused, you're not thinking clearly. This is exactly what I've been worried about." "I'm thinking very clearly. Clear enough to have spent today documenting every unauthorized transaction you've made in the past 18 months. You're being paranoid, unreasonable, this is why you need help. And clear enough to have found my jewelry buried in the backyard." The words hung in the air like an explosion. Linda's face went completely white, then red again, cycling through emotions too quickly to track. "I don't know what you're talking about. At 4 this morning, I watched you bury something under the oak tree. After you went back inside, I dug it up. I found my jewelry, Linda, all of it, and I found documents including a will I never signed." Linda sat down heavily at the kitchen table, her hands shaking. For a moment she looked like the little girl she used to be, caught in a lie too big to explain away. "Mom, I can explain." "I hope so. I was trying to protect you from yourself. You've been so confused lately, so disoriented. You were talking about giving things away, about changing your will to leave money to charities instead of family. I was just keeping your valuables safe until you were thinking more clearly." "I've never talked about changing my will." "You have, Mom. You just don't remember, that's the problem. Your memory isn't what it used to be." "My memory is fine, Linda. Fine enough to remember that I've never discussed my will with you. Fine enough to remember that you've been pressuring me to move to a senior facility. Fine enough to remember that you've been gradually taking control of every aspect of my life. Because you need help. I need help or you need my money." The question hit its target. Linda's carefully constructed facade of concern crumbled, replaced by something uglier, more desperate. "Do you have any idea how expensive it is to live these days? How much debt I'm carrying? How much I've sacrificed to take care of you?" "Sacrificed? You moved into my house, took over my finances, and have been stealing from me for 18 months. What exactly have you sacrificed?" "My life, my privacy, my freedom. I had my own apartment, my own routine, my own plans. Then Dad died and you fell apart, and suddenly I'm supposed to put everything on hold to babysit a woman who can't even remember where she put her jewelry." "I remember exactly where I put my jewelry. In a locked box in my bedroom closet, a box you somehow got into. The lock was broken. The lock was picked." Linda stood up abruptly, pacing to the window, then back to the table. "Mom, you don't understand the position I'm in. The real estate market has been terrible. I haven't sold a house in 6 months. I have credit card debt, car payments, mortgage payments on my own place. I needed help, and you have more money than you could spend in 3 lifetimes. So you decided to steal it. I decided to borrow it. I was going to pay it back." "With what money? You just said you haven't sold a house in 6 months." "I was going to pay it back when the estate was settled. When I died, she was going to pay it back when I died. And the nursing home brochures, the applications for power of attorney, the forged will." Linda's composure cracked completely. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to find a solution that worked for everyone. A solution where I disappear into an expensive facility and you take control of my assets. A solution where you get the care you need and I can manage your affairs properly. The care I need or the care that's convenient for you. Both. Mom, you can't live alone anymore. You're not safe here. You're confused, you're anxious, you're not taking care of yourself properly. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Are you? When's the last time you left this house except for doctor appointments I arrange? When's the last time you cooked a real meal or cleaned properly or did any of the things you used to do? The questions stung because they contained threads of truth. I had been withdrawn, sad, less engaged with life since Frank died, but there was a difference between grieving and being incompetent, between needing time to heal and needing to be managed. Linda, grief isn't dementia. Depression isn't incompetence. I've been sad and tired, but I haven't been unable to make decisions about my own life. Haven't you, Mom? Look around, really look. You've been letting me make all your decisions for 18 months. Banking, shopping, medical care, social activities, everything. If you're so capable, why did you let me take over your entire life? It was a fair question and it deserved an honest answer because I was drowning. Because losing your father felt like losing half of myself and I didn't know how to be a whole person again. Because when you offered to help, it felt like love and I needed to feel loved. It was love, Mom. No, Linda. Love doesn't steal, love doesn't forge documents, love doesn't bury evidence in the backyard at 4 in the morning. Love makes hard decisions sometimes. Hard decisions for who? For me or for you? Linda sat back down, her face in her hands. For both of us. Mom, I'm drowning too. I'm 38 years old, I live with my mother, I have no savings, no security, no future. I've been taking care of everyone else my whole life and I'm tired. Taking care of everyone else. You and Dad, always you and Dad. Did you know I turned down 3 job offers in other cities because you needed me close by? Did you know I broke up with someone I loved because he wanted to move to California and I couldn't leave you alone? I didn't know. Linda had never told me any of this. Did you know that I haven't been on a vacation in 5 years because I was afraid something would happen to Dad while I was gone? That I haven't dated anyone seriously since college because every man I meet eventually gets tired of competing with my parents for my attention? Linda, I never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. It was understood family comes first. Family takes care of family. Family sacrifices for family. Well, I've been sacrificing, Mom. For 20 years I've been sacrificing. And now that Dad's gone and you need even more care, I'm supposed to sacrifice even more. So your solution was to put me away and take my money. My solution was to make sure you were safe and cared for while also making sure that I could finally have a life of my own. A life funded by stealing from me. A life funded by the inheritance that would be mine eventually anyway. Eventually, when I died, which at 62 and in good health might not be for another 20 or 30 years, I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw someone I'd never seen before. Someone desperate, resentful, tired, and trapped. Someone who had convinced herself that theft was love, that betrayal was care, that my incapacity was her opportunity. But I also saw someone who had been living a lie for years, pretending to be happy with a life of constant sacrifice, pretending that taking care of her parents was fulfilling when it was actually suffocating her. Linda, I said gently, why didn't you ever tell me you felt trapped? Because I knew what you'd say. You'd say I didn't have to sacrifice, that you could take care of yourselves, that I should live my own life. But someone had to be responsible, someone had to be the reliable one. And you thought that someone had to be you. Who else was it going to be? You and Dad were so focused on each other, so wrapped up in your perfect marriage and your perfect life. I was just the kid who was supposed to be grateful for everything and never need anything for herself. The pain in her voice was real and it broke my heart, but it didn't excuse what she'd done. So when Dad died and I was vulnerable, you saw an opportunity. I saw a solution, a way to make sure you were cared for, and I was compensated for 20 years of putting my life on hold. Compensated by stealing from me. Compensated by accessing what would be mine eventually anyway. Would be yours, if I chose to leave it to you. Linda looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean that inheritance isn't automatic, Linda. It's a choice, a gift from one generation to the next. And gifts are earned through love, respect, and trust. Are you threatening to disinherit me? I'm telling you that your inheritance was never guaranteed. It was dependent on you being the kind of person who deserved it. And you don't think I deserve it. I think you deserve honesty, both giving it and receiving it, so let me be honest with you. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the oak tree where Linda had buried her secrets. What you don't know, Linda, is that the assets you've been stealing represent only a small portion of what I actually own. What do you mean? I mean that while your father was building his accounting practice, I was building my own investment portfolio. Real estate in 3 states, stock investments, business partnerships, assets that generate substantial monthly income. Linda's face went pale. How much? Enough that your theft, while hurtful and illegal, didn't actually threaten my financial security. Mom, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. Because you never asked. You never showed any interest in my capabilities, my intelligence, my independence. You saw a sad widow and assumed she was helpless. I was trying to help. You were trying to control. There's a difference. I returned to the table and sat down across from her. Linda, here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you're going to return every penny you've taken from my accounts. You're going to sign papers relinquishing any power of attorney you've claimed. You're going to move out of my house. Mom, I can't afford. And in return, I'm not going to have you arrested for theft, fraud, and forgery. Linda's face crumpled. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? What you should have done years ago, build your own life instead of trying to control mine. I don't know how. Then learn the same way everyone else learns. By trying, failing, trying again, and eventually succeeding. And my inheritance. Your inheritance will depend on whether you can demonstrate that you've learned to respect me as a person, rather than see me as a problem to be solved. Linda was quiet for a long time, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Mom, I really thought I was helping. I know you did, but Linda, helping means asking what someone needs, not deciding what they need. It means supporting their choices, not making their choices for them. I don't know how to do that. Then that's what you need to learn. Over the next several days, Linda and I worked through the practical details of undoing the damage she'd caused. Money was returned to accounts where it belonged, documents were corrected or destroyed, power of attorney papers were revoked. Linda found a small apartment across town and began the process of rebuilding her real estate career. We established new boundaries. She would call twice a week to check on me, but she wouldn't have keys to my house or access to my financial information. Most importantly, I began the process of rebuilding my own life as an independent person rather than a victim of grief. I started by hiring a housekeeper to come twice a week, not because I couldn't clean my own house, but because I didn't want to spend my time cleaning when I could be doing other things. I enrolled in a financial planning course at the community college, not because I didn't understand money, but because I wanted to understand it better. I joined a grief support group, not because I was falling apart, but because I was ready to start putting myself back together. And I began dating again, not because I was trying to replace Frank, but because I was ready to discover who Dorothy was when she wasn't defined by her marriage or her role as a mother. 6 months after that early morning discovery in my backyard, Linda came to visit. She looked different, tired but healthier, stressed but more honest. She had sold 2 houses and was slowly rebuilding her savings. She had started seeing a therapist to work through her resentment and anxiety about the future. "How are you doing, Mom?" she asked as we sat in my living room with coffee and store-bought cookies. "I'm doing well. Really well. You look good, rested. I'm sleeping better now." "That's good, I'm glad." We sat quietly for a few minutes, both of us thinking about everything that had changed. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me for what I did?" I considered her question carefully. "Linda, I've already forgiven you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean trusting you with things you've proven you can't be trusted with." "I understand." "Do you? Because I need you to understand that our relationship is different now. It's based on honesty instead of control, respect instead of assumption. I'm trying to learn how to do that. I know you are, and I'm proud of you for trying." "Really? Really?" "It takes courage to admit you've been wrong, and even more courage to change. It's harder than I thought it would be, living on my own, making my own decisions, not having someone to blame when things go wrong. But it's also better than I thought it would be. I like myself more when I'm taking care of myself instead of trying to control everyone else." "That's growth, Linda." "Mom, can I ask you something else?" "Sure." "Why didn't you have me arrested? You could have. You had evidence, documentation, everything." I thought about her question for a moment before answering, because having you arrested would have been about punishment. What I wanted was change. For both of us. Change. I wanted you to understand that I'm not a burden to be managed or a problem to be solved. I'm a person with my own thoughts, feelings, and capabilities, and I wanted to understand that myself. And do you understand that? More every day. Linda finished her coffee and stood to leave. At the door, she turned back to me. "Mom, I want you to know that I'm proud of you too, for standing up for yourself. For not letting me take away your independence. Thank you. And Mom, I love you, not because I want something from you or because I feel obligated to. I love you because you're strong and smart, and you taught me that it's never too late to become a better person." After Linda left, I sat in my quiet house and thought about the journey that had brought me to this place. From the sleepless night when I watched my daughter bury secrets in my backyard to this moment, sitting in my own living room, in control of my own life, making my own decisions about my own future. I thought about the woman I had been before Frank died, competent, independent, capable of managing complex situations and making difficult decisions. I thought about the woman I had become in my grief, smaller, quieter, more willing to let others take control. And I thought about the woman I was becoming, still grieving, still learning, but also strong, decisive, and determined to live the rest of my life on my own terms. At 62, I was discovering that starting over wasn't just possible, it was liberating. That night, for the first time in 18 months, I slept soundly until morning. And when I woke up, I looked out my kitchen window at the oak tree where Frank used to read his paper, where Linda had buried her secrets, where I had discovered my own strength. The tree was the same, but everything else had changed. And that change, I realized, was exactly what I needed. If Dorothy's story resonated with you, you're in the right place. Here at Wisdom Strikes Back, we share stories of seniors who refuse to be underestimated and prove that experience is power. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell if you believe that wisdom and dignity deserve respect. Share this video with someone who needs to remember their own strength. Tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated because of your age? How did you handle it? Your stories inspire our community. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are never too old to stand up for yourself. Until next time, keep proving that wisdom strikes back.